Hello and welcome back to MetalDisciple.com's Metalheads podcast. My name is George.
And I'm Buke.
And we are back. Sorry we weren't here last week. I was busy running around in the mountains with my family.
Remember, I'm the one who had the baby. I'm the one who should be canceling and putting off podcasts.
But I can't do it if I'm not here. I'm not here, you know. You weren't there, so. I was just say I could have brought a portable rig along, but then you wouldn't have been there, so.
Yeah, I was thinking about that with the weeks while you're gone. If I just, like fire up a recorder and just at least maybe broadcast about some news stories or what's out that week, just something.
I did that when Bree was born.
Yeah, so I was thinking I could maybe do that.
Yeah. Alrighty, well, we just got off the phone with Mike Conte from Early Man. Mike gave us a really great interview, and we're going to be playing some of the Early Man music from the new album. Thank God you've got the answers for us all.
Yeah, he was awesome.
He was. That was a great conversation.
His openness, his honesty.
And he really knows what he's doing, where a lot of people are like, oh, boo-hoo, the music industry's on the toilet. What are we going to do? We can't make any money. We can't live. We can't be rock stars. And, he really knows what he sounds like he knows what he's doing. Yeah, he's like, guy. Look, this is what I need to do to get by, and I do it, and it's working. And, like you said, he paid his rent by putting out a 3-song Halloween EP. Boom. He sounds like he's doing the right thing.
Yeah. And
that really makes me feel good about metal music in general, because so many people are complaining and he's just like, fuck it, just do it. Mm-hmm. And that's really inspiring. So, we'll be playing that for you in a little bit. So stick around and check that out. A couple episodes ago, we talked about the distortion of sound and issues with sound quality in MP3 versus vinyl and uncompressed music and things like that. And we got an email from a listener that I would like to read. And I asked him, and he said it was okay to read it. So this is from John. He said, "Hi, I was just listening to your awesome podcast when you were discussing the Distortion of Sound documentary. I'll have to admit I haven't seen it yet, but I have some quick input on the topic. First of all, I work as a sound engineer and I listen to music in expensive studio speakers every day. I also have a proper hi-fi system at home. The thing is, I can't hear the difference between 320K MP3 and CD audio. In an A/B test, I can't tell which is which. With good MP3 compression, the audio degradation is not audible unless you got some superhuman hearing or if you have spent so much money on your hi-fi system that you need to hear the difference just to justify the money you spent. What really ruins music nowadays is happening before the music even gets converted to MP3 or streamed in a compressed format on the internet. I'm talking about the brick-walled mastering job that almost every album released gets, and it really sucks the life out of the music. Could it be that the Among the Living album you listened to was a remaster, and when you listened to it on vinyl, it was the original 1987 master, made before this loudness war had really skyrocketed to insane levels? I also buy vinyls, mostly because I like the aesthetics of the format, but also some vinyls get a different mastering job where they don't brick-wall it as much as CD digital formats. MP3 is not killing the music. It is the brick-walled, limited, no dynamics whatsoever productions that is the problem. Google the loudness war. Regards, John." Thanks, John.
Yeah, that was a great email.
Yeah, I'm aware of that issue as well, and probably should have mentioned something about it, but I didn't. And you are correct. In fact, I was listening to an original vinyl pressing of Among the Living, and my MP3 version, I think, was actually at 128K. I have such a vast CD collection. When I originally ripped them all, I ripped them at 128. I've been going back and picking my favorites and re-ripping them at 320, but Among the Living was not one of them that I've done yet, so that is probably why it sounded so crappy compared to the vinyl.
Probably.
So thanks for writing in, John. It's always good to hear from people. We got another email from Daniel in Sweden. I'm not going to tell you the specifics of his email, but basically, Daniel suggested a band that we should put on the podcast. It was a band that I had actually heard of, and so I contacted the band, and they're on board, so I'm not going to tell you who they are yet, but Daniel knows. So we got them for you, buddy. They'll be on the next episode.
Thanks again for taking the time to Red and Daniel, and John.
Yes, both.
And next, Will, our buddy, sent us a tweet when I posed yesterday. If anybody has anything for the podcast they want us to discuss, he asked us, what was the strangest thing we've seen at a show and the furthest we've traveled for a show?
And also what we think of the new Cavalera conspiracy, which I don't know if you've heard it yet. I've only heard one song, so I can't really say much. I liked the one song that I heard. I just haven't listened to the rest of the album yet.
I love their first release.
Yeah?
Yeah, I just haven't listened to this one yet. But Will, to answer the question, the strangest thing personally I've seen at
I know where you're going.
Is it going to be our dubbed Freak Boy?
It is Freak Boy.
Yes. George and I were at was it Mayhem or Ozfest?
I think it was an Ozfest.
And Marilyn Manson was the headliner, like second to last. And I think he was a headliner.
I don't think he was the headliner. I think he was second to last, at least.
And this kid is...
We were at
Nissan Pavilion, Jiffy Lube Live now.
Yeah. And we were out on the lawn. And we were like pretty far back on the lawn. And so it wasn't really densely populated with people back there, you know. It was, people were fairly spread out. And I think it had just rained, too. I think like Manson came on, the clouds came in, it rained, Manson left, the cloud left, and there was no more rain. But anyway, during this, I'll let you talk.
Yeah, during this, he was in your, high school metal mall rat, for lack of a better term, look. He had the extremely large baggy pants, 15 obscure chains and buckles on it. Short little dreads, if I'm correct, short, no spiky dreads, and like the ancient medieval time floggers, he was like flogging himself with
flagellating.
Yes, he was hitting himself about the face and body, and like convulsing his face. It was
just like spasming and like having convulsions of some kind. It was very strange. And I've seen people like wasted, actually that's another one to bring up, is the dude from the Manowar show who just went boom and pissed himself and like, for all we know, is dead. Like the cops came, it was pretty fucked up. But this guy, he didn't seem wasted. He seemed weird.
Yeah, but he was literally assaulting himself. Like these were heavy blows he was landing on himself.
Yeah, we call him Freak Boy.
And another strange thing we saw at the show, George and I saw King Diamond years back at Jack's. There was
lace me up.
There was a rather large man, a flamboyant large man in a like a trench coat,
black leather trench coat,
like a duster, like a leather duster. Did he have a top hat on? I think he did.
I think he had some sort of hat,
and he had a walking stick
and a beard.
He was so flamboyant. About 500 pounds, it appeared, or something like that. He was huge. But right before they opened the door, as they opened the doors and were about to walk and go in, he turns to his female friend or partner with him,
who was much smaller,
and says, and I quote, "Lace me up." And she proceeded to kneel down and lace up his ankle-high boots. Yeah. So, as he dubbed himself, the Raven,
yeah,
could enter the show.
Lace me up. Yeah, there's some strange people out there, but hey, there are people, aren't they?
Well, the farthest I've traveled for a show, Will, I traveled to Philadelphia to see Pantera,
which is about how far from here?
About 3 hours.
3 hours.
Yeah, about 2.5, 3 hours.
Well, right about now, Tyler from Arizona is going, fuck you.
Yeah, our friends, again, if you missed last week, who took a Greyhound bus from Arizona to Richmond, Virginia for the barbecue. 50 hours, they told us, one way on a Greyhound.
3 hours ain't shit.
Yeah, so 3 hours is my farthest.
Mine's double that, and of course it's still not shit, but it was about a 6-hour drive when we went from Michigan to Massillon, Ohio, which is a Cleveland-ish area, to see Manowar back in the late 90s, I think it was. So yeah, don't really travel too much for, here in the DC area, you don't really have to because they've got a great scene here, so everybody most of the time comes by.
And plus, George gets cranky in the car on long road trips. So
I like road trips.
just it's not my driving.
Yeah, your driving sucks.
Okay, so while we were off last week, I went down to visit my parents, take my daughter down to visit and meet her great grandmother for the first time. We went to a soul food, comfort food restaurant, and I'm bringing it up here on the podcast because soul food, comfort food. It's that food that you can always it's like a warm hug from grandma. Mac and cheese.
You're making me hungry.
Yeah, mac and cheese. Fried chicken. It makes you feel good.
Yeah,
and it got me thinking in metal terms. You have any albums that are your heavy metal comfort foods?
Oh yeah,
mine in obscure that I always go to obscure because a lot of people still George and I are amazed don't listen to them. My heavy metal comfort food is Sentenced to Cold White Light.
I was going to say that too. That's Sentenced is my something bad has happened. I'm having a bad day. I'm upset about something. I'm depressed. I go to Sentenced. They're definitely one of my go-to bands.
Alice in Chains Unplugged for me is an album I can go to and always feel good. Or in my third one, I thought of three. You don't have to think of a couple, but Metallica S&M.
Really?
For me, is just
okay.
Just like a nice hug. It's just a comforting album that.
Ride the Lightning is one of my comfort albums. I would always go and listen to Fade to Black. Also, Megadeth's So Far So Good So What, In My Darkest Hour. That's, it's a song I for years have gone back to. But latter day, more recent times, Sentence is probably my go-to comfort food band.
Yeah. I remember when I posed you, hey, put this on the script tomorrow. You're like, what?
I was like, what's food got to do with it?
Yeah, that was just something I think about. So
yeah,
I was just wondering what you always go to,
Yep. So last time we did our top 3 Amon Amarth albums, and you gave me no end of shit over the fact that I didn't include With Odin on Our Side.
Yes.
I just happened to find myself listening to it after that, a few days, a week after, whatever. And I was like, let me just listen to this again. I haven't listened to it in a long time. And I was like, oh my fucking God! This album's fucking awesome.
Yes.
So while I stand by my 3 choices for the reasons that I stated, I also, in a parallel universe, have to agree With Odin on Our Side should have been on my list. So I give you credit for calling that one.
Please. Anytime I do something like that and you agree with me, please, let's always mention it on the podcast because it's so, you guys don't understand how hard it is to get through his tough metal skin.
The vinyl is on the way.
Yes. 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 So, news stories now.
Yeah. So you want to talk about this first one?
Yeah. We lost another music artist here. Wayne Static from Static X. We found out passed away
for reasons unknown.
Yeah, reasons unknown. It's they don't hide it that for years he had drug addiction problems and alcohol addiction issues. Not saying that's been the cause of death. Now they haven't given one.
Right. His wife says that he was not doing any drugs or alcohol at the time. So, but she did say he obviously did abuse himself pretty hard for years. So it could be something just gave out. But I guess we'll wait and see. Hopefully when the toxicology and the autopsy come back, that they won't say that it was drugs.
Yeah, I was a fan of Wayne. I was a fan of Static X.
Yeah, I was never really much of a fan. They came out during the new metal era, along with Disturbed and Limp Bizkit and bands like that. And the first album didn't do anything for me. The second album, called Machine, that one was all right.
It was a little cold on it.
It was a little more metal. But, and then I guess maybe I listened to a little bit, and maybe it's a little more industrial towards the end there. It just never really did much for me, but it's always sad to see somebody playing heavy music pass away. So,
yep. So to anybody who knew him or was a fan, sorry, he's passed.
Yeah. Be careful. Don't do drugs. Handle your fucking high, as Kevin Smith would say. In other news, Phil Rudd, the drummer for AC/DC, was arrested for attempting to procure murder. And then the charges were dropped. So I'm not sure what the story is there. He apparently was trying to hire somebody to kill a couple of people, or I don't know. The stuff I was reading after that made it sound like maybe I think now he was just charged with like threatening people. I'm like, what? So he said, I'm going to hire somebody to kill you. And then they like extrapolated that to he's trying to get somebody. I don't know what the story is.
No, where like Tim from As They Lay Dying actually went out, met what he thought was a hitman. Money was exchanged.
Yeah.
That type of stuff. In this case, it sounds like he was just, threats were possibly made.
Right. They said that he never should have been arrested or brought up on charges because there was no proof of anything. So who knows? I don't know what his status remains in the band. They said they were going to be touring regardless, but whether, like so many other bands, they're just going to boot him out or whether he's still in the band, I haven't heard anything about that.
Interesting, because it was within hours the news story was changing.
Yeah, I mean, I first saw it on CNN. I was like, what? I just happened to see AC/DC. I was like, it drew my eye. I was like, you don't see AC/DC on CNN unless it was like Malcolm Young. That made CNN. But I don't know. Guess we'll see. So Megadeth is going to be entering the studio in January to start recording the follow-up for Super Collider.
Does this excite you at all? Not for me.
I gotta admit, I've been a Megadeth fan for so many decades that hope always springs eternal. There were some albums that came out after Cryptic Writings. Mm-hmm. A couple of those albums after that, not so good. Not they weren't great. But then, boom, United Abominations came out, and that fucking kicked ass.
I love that album.
And The System Has Failed, I think, was the one after that. And it was pretty good. It was starting to...
Endgame, right? Was that one?
Yeah.
13.
13, yeah. And at that point, it started to kind of dilute the quality a little bit again. And so, Super Collider just wasn't really a fan. But being such a big fan of Dave Mustaine, I always hope that the next album is going to get back on track and fucking kick ass. So, do it, Dave. Do it. So this last week, we had 2 heavy metal bands in the Billboard Top 100, both Obituary and At the Gates. Obituary came in at number 75, and At the Gates at number 53. Never thought to see At the Gates, or even Obituary for that matter, in the Top 100. That's pretty awesome.
Sweet.
Yeah, that's cool. Congratulations to them.
I picked up the new At the Gates.
Yeah.
It's cool.
It is.
I like it a lot. The production value on it alone is wonderful.
Yes.
That first opening track's a little weird, though. It's like whatever Spanish is it in? Do you remember the first?
I rarely look at song titles.
Weird in opening track, but man, great album.
Yeah, cool. So did you see this thing about Slayer giving away free tickets to a fan? He apparently he was trying to sell his car or his vehicle, whatever it was, in order to get tickets to the Slayer show. And so he did this. I haven't seen the video, but he created a video of the Lincoln commercials with Matthew McConaughey, and he was spoofing that, trying to get people to sell his car so somebody would buy it and he could go to the Slayer show. Apparently, Slayer saw this and said, "Don't sell your car, man. Just here, have some free tickets." That's pretty cool.
Hey, at least he was trying to sell his car, other than the famous video of a fan carving Slayer in his wrist.
Yeah, that's hardcore. Slayer fans will do some crazy shit. And that's probably why Slayer was like, you just here, take the tickets. Don't do anything stupid, please.
Yeah, please, just come on.
Yeah.
It's on us.
Speaking of stupid, you know what I don't need?
What is that?
I don't need 8 new episodes of The Osbournes.
No, the world doesn't need that.
I'm like, really? After all this time? I mean, it's been forever, hasn't it? I never really watched one episode.
2001, 2002, around that time?
Yeah, wow. It's been a while. So, yeah, we don't need that.
No.
We don't need that.
We definitely don't need that. Just worry about getting out a new album, Ozzy. Don't worry about being on TV.
Yeah.
Worry about getting Bill Ward back in for the final album.
Yes, that should be your priority.
And did you see that news that came out that Ozzy said that I don't know if Ozzy said it, but something came out that Bill Ward joining for the final album is all on Sharon or something now.
Wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah. Because apparently she, handles all the business and stuff for the band.
Right.
But now it's between them to work out.
Well, I hope she gets her shit together and makes it happen. Cause it would be sad if he's not on the album. All right. Blind Guardian's 10th album will be called Beyond the Red Mirror and will be released February 3rd in the U.S. and January 30th in Europe. It's another one that I'm hoping is going to be a good album.
I hope I have a return to form. Again, like we've said before, I've checked out on Blind Guardian recently.
Yeah.
It doesn't have the same imaginations
from the other side.
No, doesn't have the same type of sound to them anymore.
No, it sounded kind of stock and
very much so.
Yeah.
It doesn't sound any excitement really with it.
No. Too much flash and bang and not enough substance.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, one thing I am very excited about now, I don't know if you saw this, but Paradise Lost says that they're going to be recording a new album and that it's going to have a death metal edge, embracing the band's early days. The first thing I thought when I read that was, it's because Nick is in Bloodbath now.
That's what I was about to ask.
I was like, oh, he got a taste of the hard stuff with Bloodbath, and he's like, hey, guys, this is actually kind of fun. And
maybe he saw all the excitement.
Yeah, and like Gregor, Valenfire, that's pretty heavy too.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty excited to hear what that's going to sound like.
So am I. I'm really excited for the new Bloodbath. I cannot wait for that too, going back to this.
Yeah, that's going to be awesome.
Oh, I can't wait.
Ooh, it's not on the list. I just got the promo for Nightingale.
Did you really?
I haven't heard it yet.
Oh.
But I'm so excited to hear that.
We didn't mention it in news stories this week. I saw you posted it on Facebook. Witherscape announced an EP.
That's right. I forgot about that.
We are high on these guys. It's a Don Swano project.
Yeah, he's apparently keeping busy.
Yeah, they're releasing, 3 or 4 song EP?
Yeah, well, it depends on what version you get. I think there's 4 songs if you get this version, and import version or vinyl version or whatever will have a couple more cover songs, and there's a couple new songs. I think there's something like live or something, or alternate version of something, or maybe an extended version of, the what's that, Dead for a Day. Mm-hmm. There's Dead for Another Day or something they called it, because it's an extended version of the song. And then there's a couple of cover songs, so whatever it is, I'm going to get it.
So there's something I want to mention. I saw a poster that, my favorite band, Opeth, released, and it was for a show they have coming up. I think it's in London, and the tour poster was the candle that's on the Ghost Reveries album.
Mm-hmm.
I can only hope that this is them possibly playing the Ghost Reveries album start to finish.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I remember correctly, here, don't quote me, if I remember correctly, Ghost Reveries was my number one, is my favorite Opeth album.
Right.
If they maybe play this start to finish like they did with Blackwater Park, they maybe record this. Maybe we get a live Blu-ray from it, a live album, which I love.
You know what I realized the other day? That live album they did, the Live at the Royal Albert Hall.
Yep.
It never really hit me. And I don't know why I thought of it the other day, but I've seen the Royal Albert Hall. I was there. I didn't go in, but I was there in London, and I walked by it, and I was like, oh, the Royal Albert Hall. I've heard of that place. And we walked around the park across the street from it, and I was like, I just made the connection that album was recorded in this place that I've actually been into London and seen. And I was like, oh, it's that place. Oh, okay. It's a pretty, sweet looking building. Just thought that was interesting.
So if Opeth is playing the Ghost Reveries album here, that would make my year. If they record it,
yeah.
Oh, man, that would be great.
Well, we'll see then.
We'll see.
Yep. Good luck with that.
And a little teaser here. Where will Opeth's album rate on my top 10 of the year, or however many we do of albums of the year?
I certainly hope it's not on that list, said Sean Connery. Yeah, it's almost mid-November. I have a list, but it's at least 50 bands long. So I really got to start thinking about it and trying to put them in some kind of order.
Remember, I had a baby. Well, my wife had a baby. I have a kid now, so my list would be a little harder to get together than yours. But
yes, of course. And if it's not as long as mine,
that's fine.
Well, we're used to you not being quite as long as me. So,
So let's get into new release. I'm really excited this week because 4 out of these I love.
Yeah.
I love. And one of these maybe possibly album of the year for me on this list.
Really?
Yep.
Oh, okay. Well,
so let's hear here.
At least one of these is in my top 10. So, all right. First one is the new Lordi album, Scare Force One. Har har har. Take on Air Force One. I get it.
We were pretty excited about these guys when they did the whole Eurovision thing.
Yeah, I mean,
we had tickets to go see them.
We did. That's right. What did that get canceled?
The tour got canceled.
That's right. Wow, I forgot about that.
Yep.
Still got an unused ticket sitting around somewhere.
Yep.
Wow. Yeah, I haven't listened to the new album yet, so I can't tell you anything about it. But I've dug their past albums, so I'll probably at least kind of like it. The next one, holy hell! Have you listened to this one?
Yep.
I did not know who this was when I came across it.
If for somebody of note, I don't know that. I've listened to them.
This is a band called The Skull, and their album, For Those Which Are Asleep. Okay, this is 75% Trouble.
Okay, now it sounds, I can hear it now.
Eric Wagner, the singer from Trouble, original drummer from Trouble, and I believe the bass player, not the original bass player, but from like Run to the Light and a few albums after that, the bass player from there. So I was like,
that's why the Trouble was so strong. The pentagram sound was coming through.
Yeah, The Skull. It's named after the album The Skull. And obviously this is one of those, Trouble is still around with completely different people. And they were like, hey, let's do something related, The Skull. And wow, I was listening to this and I was like, man, that sounds familiar. Who are these guys? And I looked it up and I was like, duh. I was like, wow, okay, that's awesome. And that got me really excited. So...
Really, I listened to this earlier today when I was working on my hockey stuff. It sounded great.
Yeah, this is like classic, early to mid 80s doom metal. Obviously a more contemporary style and sound, but, it sounds like Old Trouble, which is pretty badass. Mm-hmm. Next up, Carcass is putting out an EP of leftover material from their last album. It's called Surgical Remissions Surplus Steel. I haven't heard anything off of this yet either. I did get a promo of it, but so much music, so little time. Next up, we have Devilment with The Great and Secret Show. This is the side project for Danny Filth from Cradle of Filth.
Do you know what comes through hearing this? I'm going to mention this. How much of this have you heard?
Not a lot. I heard a little, enough to know that this is definitely different than Cradle of Filth. I like that he's doing a different vocal style, getting outside of the Cradle of Filth box. I know they did. I can't remember which album it was. Was it Damnation? I don't know. There was one of those albums from that period. He did some clean vocals on like one or two songs, and people shit all over him. And I thought it was great that he was doing something slightly different, but he hasn't done anything like that since in Cradle of Filth that I've heard. So I like that he's doing something outside of Cradle of Filth where he can choose to do something a little bit different. Like I said, I haven't really listened to much of it yet, so I don't know how good it is, but...
Okay, you can listen to me and text me or call me later, and we'll talk about it in maybe next podcast. Tell me if this doesn't sound like, with the band behind him, that Danny is not singing for Devil Driver.
Really?
That's exactly the sound that comes through.
Devilment, Devil Driver.
Yeah, it sounds exactly like Devil Driver, just Danny being the singer.
Interesting.
I'm telling you it does.
Okay.
So I heard it today. No, interesting stuff. I've never been a Cradle of Filth fan. You are, and I know the early stuff you love.
Yeah.
So maybe I'll check this out, because since I'm not the biggest Cradle fan, maybe with this I'll really check it out.
Yeah.
This next album is I like this a lot.
I didn't know you were familiar with them. This next band is also probably going to be on, maybe my top 10, but definitely on my list. Finnish band Ghost Brigade and their album 4, One with the Storm. I really, really loved their last album, Until Fear No Longer Defines Us. Great fucking mix of like death metal,
melodic doom.
There's clean vocals and harsh vocals, and just very atmospheric and emotional music. I really dug that album, and I've been listening to this one this past week, and it is also very fucking good.
Yeah,
you need to listen to Ghost Brigade. You have any thoughts on them?
Just that today, when I was listening to them also this morning, prepping for this show, the melodic, clean vocals. This is what I'm listening to now.
It's really interesting because like the album starts off heavy. The first song kicks in and it's a pretty heavy song, and it's like harsh vocals, and then like the middle of the album gets really clean and pretty and not quite as heavy. I mean, they still throw in some, there's heavy here and there, but the album starts off and you're like, oh, this is going to be a heavy album. And then really like changes direction and you're like, oh, wow, cool. It's very dynamic that way.
And I jumped in right in the middle. I picked a random track right in the middle and I'm like, man, this is soft.
Yeah. But then like it just picks right back up again and gets heavy again. So it's really good. So make sure to check that out. Next, of course, is Job for a Cowboy and their new album, Sun Eater.
There's a lot of talk around this album.
Yeah, I know Job for a Cowboy. I've listened to all their albums, but I'm not like, I don't have everything memorized. I'm not a super fan of the band. I'm a fan, but so when I was listening to this, I was like, it feels a little different than the last album, like slower and more deathy, heavy. Yeah. Even a little bit of doomy sound to it. And I was like, right on. It was very cool. I was really digging it. I don't know what you think.
The nice thing for Job for a Cowboy is each album from their EP when I first found them to where they're at here with Sun Eater, they haven't been stuck in a rut of the same, like when they first came out. They were at the forefront of that deathcore scene, that a lot of those bands aren't around anymore. Mm-hmm. They've always been one of probably the most popular of that genre, but they've evolved with each album.
Yeah, they're one of the few bands that has any kind of core attached to it that I'll actually listen to, and that's kind of what I liked about this album, is that it was really sort of distancing itself from that old core type sound. Mm-hmm. This was much more metal and just death, and I was like, yeah, I like it.
Now this next one may be my album of the year.
It is definitely in my top 10. I was listening to this yesterday. This is Machine Head and their new album, Bloodstone and Diamonds. Holy shit, this album is amazing.
Every time, these guys keep getting better and better.
They do. When they released the video for Now We Die, we were talking about it. And you were like, this sounds like Blackening. And I was like, this sounds like Locust. Having listened to the whole album front to back now, we're both right.
Really?
Yes. I was listening to it today at the gym, and I was like, wow, he's right. This is very Blackening. The first couple of songs are very Blackening.
And that's the album that got us both on board. Again with the band.
And then, like, he'd go into the next song, and I'm like, oh, that's very Locust. And so what I get from this is that this is really the best of Blackening and Locust in something entirely new. Have you heard the whole album?
Nope.
Oh, my fucking God, Rob is pissed.
Is he?
There are, like, vocals on here that are, like, almost death metal. He gets fucking pissed.
Wow.
He's like, he's got some like rough vocals, but oh my God.
Now from Blackening on, same kind of longer 6-7 minute songs.
Yeah, there's like 7-8 minute songs plus some like 3-4 minute songs.
Awesome. We don't have to worry about children singing no in this one, do we?
No, unfortunately not. That was one of my favorite songs. Who We Are, a great fucking song. But this album, Now We Die. Incredible.
That's all I've heard.
Ghosts Will Haunt My Bones is another really great one. Sail Into the Black. First half of the song the first time I heard it, this one annoyed me because it was very quiet and he's just kind of talking for like 3 minutes and 4 minutes. But then it just kicks in and like that lull, and then to go from that and into something really heavy, it was just really cool and dynamic and I loved it. And Eyes of the Dead is another one on there. Fucking amazing. The song Game Over, he loses his fucking mind on the song Game Over. It is fucking brilliant. So, yeah, definitely going to be in my top 10 albums this year. Wow. And, if I had like a separate list for, I don't want to call them commercial, but more accessible and popular bands, it would be number one on that list for sure.
Wow, okay. That's where you put like your Lamb of Gods and those type of stuff, yeah.
Yeah. I've been saying it all year. Triptychon's going to be my number one. Tombs is going to be my number 2. This may even creep into the top 5. Okay?
Wow.
It's really fucking good. The songwriting is there. It's fucking heavy, but there's, vocal hooks. Not quite clean, but sort of clean. But they're hooks.
Their hooks have been always what's got me about them. What I love about them.
Yeah.
The choruses, singing along with all the choruses.
Mm-hmm. So good. So, they really nail it on this one.
I guess canceling that tour to finish up the album, maybe they needed to do it. I don't know how it couldn't have been finished, but...
Yeah. Well, good job, guys. This is fucking brilliant.
Did you order this on vinyl?
I did.
It comes out Tuesday or Monday? Right?
Yeah, Tuesday.
Wait, yeah.
Tuesday. I don't know when the vinyl's shipping. I haven't heard anything yet.
Yeah, I'm really excited about that. That's... Again, George and I have always been fans of these guys. You've known them longer than me, but as they kind of were going through their new metal rap rock phase for a while there with some of the songs they were doing, their style was changing.
Yeah. Well, he was doing what he had to do to try and keep the band alive.
And then The Blackening came out.
Yeah. Yeah. Enough said. Just listen to it.
Yep.
All right. Well, this last new release this week is a band that I heard. I got the promo a couple of weeks ago, and I mentioned it to you. I don't know that I actually mentioned the band name by name, but I said, hey, there's this band coming out. It's like sludge, doom, heavy. The band's called Usnea, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. I looked it up online. It's a type of lichen that grows on trees, apparently. And according to the internet, it's pronounced Usnea, Usnea. And their album, Random Cosmic Violence. This was, wow. This was like, the last Ahab album, The Giant, the like ethereal, clean guitar work, and then it just like punches you in the side of the head with something heavy, and the vocals are just like, just harsh as fuck. And it's a really cool album. This might actually make the list somewhere too. I have to listen to it a little more and look at my list and see what's what, but I really liked this album. And
didn't we just say last week that things were starting to slow down for new releases for the year? Look at us now. We're so excited about 4 of these on here.
Yeah, well, I did say November's a big month.
Okay.
There's a lot of stuff coming out this month, but then December, it's going to drop off big time. I don't know what the hell we're going to talk about.
We could find. We may have one new release.
Yeah.
Since I know video games, I may throw in a video game or two.
Well, as long as it's like Brutal Legend where they play metal. All right. Well, I think it's time to get into the interview. This week's band is called Early Man. And as we mentioned earlier, we had the privilege and the pleasure to speak with Mike Conte of Early Man. So we're going to play you the interview now, and that will lead into the first song. And then we'll be back. Hey everyone, this is George and Buke from METALHEADS podcast. We are here today with Mike Conte from Early Man. How you doing, Mike?
I'm good. How are you guys?
Pretty good. Since there might be some listeners that are not familiar with Early Man, could you maybe start us off with a little bit of band history?
Yeah, the band is it's actually been around, at least in my own mind, for about 20 years. It started with me in, I want to say, maybe the mid-90s, doing 4-track recordings with anybody who was around in that era might remember the amazing Tascam 4-track recorder.
I used to I still have one of those.
Yeah, they're great. They actually still sound good for some stuff. But as soon as and also any guitar player will know this, as soon as the pod was invented, the first generation, I lived in Ohio. I'm originally from Ohio, Marion, Ohio, technically, but moved to Columbus, Ohio when I was about 17, 18 years old.
I grew up in Michigan, so I know the area.
Cool. Midwestern pride.
Hell yeah.
I bought a pod, and I had a Tascam 4-track recorder, and I bought an Alesis SR16 drum machine.
I got one of those too. And a pod.
They're great. I mean, surprisingly enough, it's not that different than digital setups are now. There was a lot of things in that era that you could do with that setup that you still do now when you fire up Logic and you use Superior Drummer and whatever, a guitar plugin. It's just sort of the same difference. But I started doing tape demos into the mid and late 90s, and I ended up moving to New York City in 1998 after having spent a year in Minneapolis. I moved to New York, and I just started circulating tape demos of the stuff that I was doing. And at the time, there wasn't a lot of whatever I was doing. There wasn't a lot of that going around. It was somewhere in between early Metallica, early Megadeth, and Sabbath. And in New York City, we had a lot of electronic bands at the time.
Okay.
Or if we had metal, it was, I'm not going to mention any names, but it was like the Britney Spears version of heavy metal. Nothing heavy about it, So the demos and the sort of, even though we were well past the tape trading days of heavy metal, that stuff was still kind of going on in the underground scene in New York a little, and that gave the band its legs a little. And from there, it sort of grew, and we signed with a label in New York, which would bring you to about like 2003, 4, 5, and that's a quick history of the band. We have 2 full-length releases on much larger labels, and then this latest release I released myself.
Hey, Mike, you were talking about, the early days there. That was right around the time, and George and I spoke about this a couple episodes back. What did you think about Napster at that time, and did you like it? And did you use it to possibly help spread the word of your band? As you know, the tape trading days were kind of a thing of the past.
That's a really good question. I remember having it's funny to even think about this now, but I remember having like really hardcore moral dilemmas during Napster days when I got my first laptop, because it was like for the first time ever, you could just sit down and get anything you wanted, and it actually made you stop and think like, well, I think Dave Mustaine's got enough money.
Yeah,
so I'm gonna grab his new record. And I was doing that stuff, as everyone was doing. But then all of a sudden, when I was making music, and I saw that it would take me 6 months to put 2 songs together properly into listenable form that I would let other human beings hear, it sort of changed my opinion of how that should all go down. I'm sort of somewhere in between. I'm definitely not Lars Ulrich, I thought that shit was completely insane. Like, some kind of monster. Here's a motherfucker selling like millions of dollars in paintings because he's bored, going after poor people, quote unquote, stealing his music that's doing nothing but making his band bigger. All it's doing is selling more tickets for him, selling more Metallica CDs, t-shirts, whatever, and they couldn't see that. But at the same time, I also think, like, should music be free? Not really. There's got to be some support coming from somewhere, or guys like me can't do this,
Yeah, that's always been my thing. I have always seen the exposure, because my first exposure to you mentioned your early albums. Was it 2005 you released your Closing In album?
Yeah, it was 2005.
Yeah. I saw you in Jack's in Springfield, Virginia. I don't remember who you were opening for.
I remember that show well. Yeah,
but I don't remember what tour that was. But I believe it was through a Napster service or a clone like that I had even heard of you prior to that show. So right. In that aspect, it was great exposure, but also, by downloading it, whoever's taking money out of your pocket. Right.
And I think, what's funny though, is I think that time period, we have anybody that's still a musician that's still complaining about that kind of stuff is also still living in 2005, because we're way past that time period now. There's ways around that. There's ways. My band is never, thank God, going to be as big as, whoever. I'm taught, let's step outside of metal. I don't have to worry about Early Man becoming the next Radiohead, Right. But because of that, you have such a tight fan base that of course you can go to them and say, hey, please support me. Let's at least have some good goddamn music left on the planet. Let's have some riffs. Let's have some things you guys that think like I do. Let's have some things that we can all share together, and those people will respond. It's funny, like, what do I need as a fan base to actually live off of this band? Not a lot. Anywhere between 500 to 1,000 hardcore followers that are supporting me and what I'm doing, and I'm fine. I'll write riffs until I'm 95 years old all day long.
Now, us as metal fans, we are a passionate group. Do you think those same metal fans, though, you said you would rather have 500 or 1,000 passionate ones, what do you think they would do if, this new album does for something, take off? And now you're playing, those 2,000 seat venues. And they say, oh, Early Man Mike is now selling out.
Yeah, you're always going to get that kind of backlash. I mean, it's a tough one because as a musician, obviously your goal is how many people can I get to hear the music? This is partially why when I released the new record, I chose to release it through Bandcamp. I chose to make it free for the first month. It's no longer free now. Now it's $6.66. But it's funny because you're seeing guys that have a much bigger following than me use Bandcamp to do similar things. I noticed that Godflesh released their record through Bandcamp. I don't know if he did it exclusively, but basically all of the best, biggest perks and quickest, easiest way to get the record was through Bandcamp. That's veering off a little bit from whether or not it's free, but my point is just there's avenues now where I can say, hey, go here and download this record for $5, and I keep 85% of the profit right away into, whatever, a PayPal account. If that fan base goes from 1,000 people to 100,000 people, it creates all kinds of new problems. I can't facilitate that myself anymore. Mm-hmm. I can't wake up at 8 a.m. and be like, let me make sure that Kip from Michigan has his EP. It's just not, it's not possible. If that happens, I won't be able to write music anymore. So I think your original question falls under the category of like, you can't please everybody. I'm certainly happy I love being the underdog. I'd rather be the smaller guy. Mm-hmm. Even on a tour, let me play at 7:30 and blow the roof off the place, and make a 60-year-old Kronos actually try to look like he can still play bass, at 10:30 at night. That's not believe me. I love Venom. I'm just saying we did some tours with Venom, and we had an opening slot, and we were like, this is the greatest thing in the world. You play to a packed house at 7 p.m. By 8 o'clock, we're all wasted up the street eating cheeseburgers. This is amazing. So there's benefits to being the underdog. But of course, we've toured with bands. A band that comes to mind is a band, The Sword. They opened for us on our first tour. 3 years later, they're in an arena opening for Metallica. They're still the same guys. I know them all. They're all great guys. They haven't changed a bit. But they have numerous new fans. But then there's this sort of undercurrent of backlash against them because it's like, why didn't it happen to me? That's like asking why you didn't win the lottery. It happens to some bands, it doesn't to others.
It's kind of like I don't know if you read that piece. I can't remember his name. The guy from God Forbid put out a piece a couple months back about, why some of those new metal bands.
Doc Coyle.
Yeah, Doc put that thing about, why some of these new metal bands didn't make it and why bands like Killswitch Engage, for whatever reason, the spark found them and they made it.
Right.
But quickly going back to Bandcamp, with these crowdfunding websites like the Bandcamps or the Kickstarter, where you pretty much control your own product and put it out, what do you think about these larger, already established bands who might not have put out something in years, kind of encroaching on your territory?
Each circumstance is its own case, right? But I think what you're getting at is why.
Because it is my field that, hey, yes, most recent one that comes to mind, Obituary, did a successful Kickstarter campaign. I think they raised like 60 or 80 grand, something like that. To me, they're a band that I thought, hey, Kickstarter should not be for you.
I agree with that. I actually just saw, I don't know if you guys watch that show Portlandia, but I just saw, there was something on that show that was kind of a jab at what you're talking about. Like major actors or actresses using Kickstarter to fund movies or whatever. It's like, it's the same difference. It's like you don't need that to do that. Like I actually need it. I actually took after, Indiegogo and PayPal and everybody took their cut out of what we raised, I literally went with a stack of $100 bills to Sam Ash and bought recording gear. And I was like, okay, now we can get the show on the road. I don't think that's what Obituary did with their 80 grand.
No.
You know, I doubt it. And I also think that there's something that seems like a little bit, you know, I don't want to say sinister. That sounds maybe that's a little too dramatic, but you get the feeling that there's more going on behind the scenes with a band that big. Again, I don't know their story, but I really do have a feeling that there's a lot of bands on Kickstarter, not just a feeling, I know of some that are actually backed by labels. And the label is saying, go do a Kickstarter or go do an Indiegogo and let's at least get 10 grand going here. And then we'll put in the rest. That's bullshit, you know, because a label has the juice to do anything. They could get you a song placed somewhere for 100 grand. They have that kind of power. They should be working with things from the ground up, as far as I'm concerned. But, you know, what happens? Everything gets homogenized. Everything. Or everything gets taken over that starts in the underground. If it becomes cool, forget it. Everyone's going to do it. And that's exactly where the whole crowdfunding thing is right now. It's, in my opinion, it's over. I'd never do it again. It's already done, you know?
Did you see the thing about Winter Sun? How they were doing some sort of crowdfunding, or they wanted to? They're on Nuclear Blast. And originally Nuclear Blast was like, no, you can't do that. And I don't know, it was a big deal or whatever, but eventually...
Yeah, I saw like a little bit of, I read a couple like boards about it. I know I'm familiar with what you're talking about.
And then whatever, they got it worked out. They're getting ready to do the crowdfunding, and the main Winter Sun guy put up their plans for what they're going to do. And he wants to build this studio so that they have somewhere to work. And he put up a diagram, and there was a sauna in it. And people were like losing their shit, going, why are we paying for you to have a sauna? Make us some fucking music.
I mean, that's exactly, you know, that says it all right there. The other thing is, if you want to build a studio, I mean, that's great. And I think that's noble, but I don't think that's what we started crowdfunding for.
Yeah.
Like, I think you can also go get a night stocking job at Walmart for a year, put 15 grand back, and then build your studio next year. Like, because what's going to happen is all you're going to do, we all know what's going on. You're going to juice the costs for this bundle is $150 and we'll sign it in the blood of our grandmother, whatever the fuck it is. And it just gets to the point where you're like, dude, come on, man. Like, all we want is 8 to 10 songs that rip. It doesn't really take that much.
Yeah.
We all know you can go into a studio for somewhere between 5 to 10 grand and do that. Or you can do what I did, teach yourself how to do it all with 5 microphones and a couple laptops, and it's the same difference. So some of that backlash is, I think they deserve it, you know?
Yeah. I noticed that you seem to be doing most of the instruments on this new album, which, by the way, is called Thank God You've Got the Answers for Us All. So what's the story there? What was your instrument of choice when you first started playing, and what led to you picking up other instruments? And just how much is you on this new album?
It's pretty much, it's all me. It's a lot me. I don't want to take anything away from the drummer, John, who tracked all the drums, but I did also sort of write all the drum parts as well. But you guys will get a kick out of this. I actually I come from a very scary religious background family.
Nice.
The whole entire family is Jehovah's Witnesses.
And that's actually why we have you on this podcast. This is actually a Jehovah Witness podcast. It all comes full circle now.
Anyway.
Yes, you're at my door right now with a watchtower. Yes, and it's all a big joke.
The bikes are locked up down the street.
Jesus Christ. But yeah, I come from a crazy religious family, and they thought it would be a brilliant idea to have me start playing violin, which I'm not against, when I was in first grade. And so I picked a violin up, and I was pretty decent with it until I got to about, I want to say it was around like 5th or 6th grade. I kind of started looking around, and I was like, this is this is really dorky, to be a violin guy, which of course is like a horrible thing to say because that's not true.
But it is.
But,
come on.
When you're at that age, I was just like, you got to be kidding me.
I started off with a trumpet in a denim sack. Okay, and do you think my school had actually trumpet in the band? No, they had the little ones, the cornets. Yeah, so I was the kid with the trumpet in the denim sack. That didn't last but 2 weeks.
Oh my God, that's amazing. Those are like, I think it's great that they do that. Those are like gateway drugs for those of us that become actual musicians, at that age.
Yeah.
And of course there were guys I went to a tiny little school in Ohio. I remember there being a guy in there who just ripped on violin. He was unbelievable, like complete virtuoso, But it kind of made me think, like, I don't think this is I don't see myself doing this. And I, through a crafty series of lies and deceptive Bible quotes and whatever it needed to take, I got my hands on a guitar. My dad bought me a guitar. And I remember I learned Proud Mary was the first song I learned. And I was blown away because the guitar has frets on it. And obviously a violin doesn't.
Right.
And I was like, this is a goddamn piece of cake. And then I took I think 2 guitar lessons from somebody. Ironically enough, this probably really shaped me. At the time, I didn't know it. I took a little bit of time off from guitar, but I started to revisit it in my later teens. And there was a guy, his name was George, who was a huge Maiden fan. And he was a guitar instructor, and his whole thing was he wanted to teach me some riffage. And he taught me a couple bar chords, basically off of Killers. Like, here's an example of what he's doing, and then here's how it's done. And then I went home and did that. And I, at the time, didn't even have a distortion pedal. I didn't know what I was doing. But I was hooked from that point on. But it's funny because I got a late start, much later than anybody else that you would consider an even remotely decent guitar player, period. I don't think I really went for it and picked the instrument up properly until I was about 19 years old, which is odd,
Yeah, we will play some of your songs later in the podcast. For the listeners out there who haven't heard you, your riffs are fucking killer. Do you find it rough this day and age to, because me and you are different in this, obviously, because you know how to play. You and I listen to, metal. I guess where I'm going with this question is, are there any riffs that you just sit there and you try and write and you're like, I've heard that before. And is it a struggle for you to come up with these killer riffs that you do play?
Yeah, you definitely have to. I'm sorry, did I just cut you off?
That's all right. I sort of was trying to squeeze in there. I was just going to say, did you know that one time I actually wrote Electric Funeral? Then I found out that somebody had already done it.
What's funny? Yes, that happens. But let me try to give you the quick version of this story. So, from a religious family who was obviously guarding me from the evils of Ozzy Osbourne and Randy Rhoads, right, as I was growing up, which was easy to do in a small town. I did not have that much exposure to music. As luck and fortune and as the fate of the universe would have it, my grandma had an accidental late son when she was 46 years old. And so he's my uncle, and he's 6 or 7 years younger than me.
Already.
Yeah. So this created this interesting setup when we would go visit. My grandparents lived in Dayton, Ohio, which is about 2 hours from where I grew up. So we would go visit Grandpa and Grandma, and all of a sudden I had a little uncle to hang out with.
That needs to be your next band's name.
Exactly.
Little uncle.
Amen. But this was during, I was young, so this is during kind of picture this happening in the 80s during like the Star Wars period, all of that. And I was allowed to have a little bit of exposure to pop culture, but nothing like him. He was just a normal kid. So anytime you got to go to grandma's house, I got to play with Star Wars toys. I got to play with G.I. Joes. My life opened up for 2 days when we were there for the weekend. Well, when we entered our teens, when I was 19, he was about, 13, 14 years old. He started playing drums. And he started a metal band with his friends at school called Silence. And they did covers of all the classic stuff. Mainly, they were doing a lot of Megadeth, Metallica, and Pantera covers. And what happened was my grandma, who was sort of your typical slightly heavy set, bifocals, literally crocheting every day type of a grandma. We show up once when I was about 18 or 19 years old. She opens the door and she's dressed in black, has a Megadeth shirt on, has lost 75 pounds, and has like dyed black hair.
What?
And she's like 20 years younger.
What?
And I was like, of course I was like, fuck yes. I was like, are you kidding me? Like my parents were horrified. They're like, what has happened? So basically what happened was this, obviously you guys know the drill. This happens with a lot of parents. The son, my uncle, had started a band that was playing locally a lot in Dayton, and she wanted to support him. And she just got sucked in and taken by the power that is heavy metal.
The power of the riff.
The power of the riff. She was literally taken by that at, 50 years of age.
That's awesome.
And so what happened for me is that first visit, that was the first time ever that I heard a live band play in someone's basement. And you guys know how Midwestern 14-year-olds can be with their heavy metal. These kids were crushing it.
Yeah.
I mean, it might as well have been Pantera in the basement. Playing Walk over and over and over again. And for me, I was like, at that age, I was like, okay, I've been shown Jesus. I've been shown the possibility of college. I've been shown go get a job. What I'm hearing right now just altered my life. Yeah. Just amazing, like unbelievable. So what happened was the kid that was their lead guitar player was like, what's the deal? So you've been playing guitar a little? And I was like, yeah, I've been playing a little, but not like that. Like that shit's insane. And he was like, well, a lot of it's got to do with this thing called a distortion pedal. Imagine this is real. This actually happened. I was 19 years old and I was like, what is it? He's like, it's this little box and you plug the one cable in here and then you plug out to the amp and then now it sounds like this. And I was like, oh my God. He took pity on me. This is so beautiful. Like, only in the metal world, right?
Yeah.
Took pity on me and was like, here, put this in your back pocket, and gave me a heavy metal distortion pedal. I'm sure you have seen or know of that pedal.
I think I have a few lying around.
And I took it back home, and my parents were like, what is going on in the bedroom now? Like, holy shit. And that really altered my whole, I was beginning to get a little more serious about playing guitar. But between having just been shown Iron Maiden riffs and then that experience happening where heavy metal grandma entered the picture, and it in my mind, it kind of became like, oh, it's okay. Because before that, it was like, that was a taboo subject and also a very look down your nose upon profession or choice in life. But that changed me forever. Still, to this day, when I go into an early man practice and we fire it up and it really gets rolling, that same feeling comes up that I got that day that I first saw those guys jamming. Same thing. It's right there again.
Like us as guys sit around, we all talk about the first girl that we all hooked up with. Your story is even better because it's the first pedal that opened your eyes to this whole world in this first show.
Exactly. And it was the next 6 months were like, I mean, talk about a good time. This is before, it's funny you would bring Napster up because this is before you could do stuff like that. We're talking now about like probably early to mid 90s. So I had to find ways to sneak, Judas Priest records, Dio records, Sabbath records, Megadeth records in and out of my house and car in a very religious household. You know, anybody catches a hold of some early Dio record artwork that's trying to convert their son to Christianity is not stoked.
No.
You know?
Growing up, I had one of my best friends. His mom was Jehovah's Witness, and she would not let him have any of the music that we were listening to. And whenever she would find any of his cassette tapes, she would throw them out.
Yeah.
So he started stealing her religious tapes, bringing them to me, and I would dub metal albums over top of them. So
Been there, done that. I know exactly what you're talking about. Yep.
So they were in disguise.
Everything I had to do would be in disguise. It's funny. I would go buy. I mean, you could get a lot of stuff from friends or whatever, but I would, there's certain, obviously, like a record that comes to mind that was happening at that time that I will say now, looking back over my life, is probably the record that, in conjunction with that other story, changed me forever. Is Countdown to Extinction by Megadeth.
Great
because I knew it was coming out. I didn't know what it was going to sound like, but I was like armed with like, I know what heavy metal is now, motherfuckers. And this record is coming out. What's it going to sound like? And then it sounded like that. I was like, holy shit, this is the greatest. I want to be buried in a sea of this record for the rest of my life. But I remember going and buying that and having to dub it onto like a regular looking old tape, in order to listen to it, because had that artwork or that name even been found anywhere near anything I was doing, I probably would have been castrated. Who knows? I have no idea.
Now, would you and heavy metal grandma get in arguments about like who was better, Dio or Ozzy era Sabbath?
Yeah, we would talk about, and it's funny, like, I know you're probably joking, we would actually talk about that stuff.
That is badass.
Because she decided to start taking guitar lessons, and she actually became pretty good.
Nice.
She passed away about a month before September 11th happened, actually. I went back to her funeral in Ohio, but she was buried with her guitar.
That is awesome.
So it stuck with her through her whole, the rest of her life, but she was also taking guitar lessons, and she was known around the city as Heavy Metal Grandma. And
awesome.
we would talk about that kind of stuff all the time. Like, I don't know, there's some Dio Sabbath that is heavy duty. Let's not fuck around, but just amazing, because literally 5 years prior, she's crocheting in the corner and we're playing with G.I. Joes, so.
Wow.
It was intense.
It's the greatest story I've ever heard.
Yeah. All right. I know this is a rather stock question, but particularly now that I've heard all of this, I'm really curious to know, like, what were your earliest influences? What were the metal bands that really turned you on and made you say, I want to do this?
I think earliest influences were the big three that turned me. I guess it should be big four that turned me were Metallica, Megadeth, Pantera, and Slayer. Those were the four that I first heard that I was like, oh my God, like, this is like, what this is life. If you remove this, I'm jumping off of a bridge. This is unbelievable.
Yeah.
But then you know how it works. Like when you, especially if because I could technically be considered kind of like your typical middle class suburban 19-year-old white kid at that point. I had different problems than the average guy, but I was going to be listening to a lot of whatever you would want to. A lot of people would call that mall metal. I don't agree with that, but stuff that you could walk into any record store at that time and buy.
Right.
So then after I got into those bands, I started digging, a little deeper into things like, Dio, Maiden, stuff that wasn't quite as pumped as those bands were at the time. But that led into when I started riffing a lot, interestingly enough, I got into a lot of like hard rock as well. Like, UFO, Uriah Heep, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, classics.
But was also very blown away. I guess the thing for me is I was taken by, here's a song that changed me. I was like, okay, there's something going on between what Mustaine does and what was happening here. You listen to a song like Sails of Sharon by the Scorpions. That's like, there's something there that's like early hard rock meets metal songwriting that at the time I was beginning to learn to play guitar and write wasn't happening that much. Even like the production quality of it, the whole thing. So those kind of things altered my songwriting ability, and also just the importance I put on, it's got to be a song. For me personally, it's got to be, I want an intro, I want a verse and a chorus with a hook that I can't get over, you know, that goes into this, that goes into that. Any band that was doing that type of stuff caught my attention. Even at the time, like I always thought Alice in Chains was a killer metal band. Yeah. I had no idea why. When I would watch MTV Headbangers Ball, I was like, why are they getting grouped in with these horrible Seattle bands? You know, like this is a heavy metal band. And also kind of felt the same way about like early Soundgarden stuff. But I liked a lot of that stuff because it was songwriting. So those were definitely influences. And then I also do come from a very DIY punk background. Love Black Flag, love Minor Threat, you know, all that stuff. So it's a little bit of a ball of all of that, if that makes any sense.
That makes a lot of sense. My favorite thing about you, I know we talked about, you know, your riffs and stuff like that. I actually think your vocals are probably the best thing about you and your project that you do. I know, you know, you've heard it asked before, and it's been mentioned numerous times in write-ups and stuff. You have a very Ozzy, you know, early Ozzy kind of sounding voice.
Right.
I know, you know, some things we're kind of born with how we sound, but did you kind of consciously go for that in your singing style?
I think you know, to be honest with you, I don't know. I know that I definitely wasn't trying to sound like that.
Yeah.
And one thing that sort of opened my eyes is after Closing In came out, I started going to, there's a really famous vocal teacher in New York who's amazing, who deals with a lot of metal guys. Her name is Melissa Cross. And I started going to her. You know, her whole big thing is, you know, I know she works with like Randall from Lamb of God and like all these like heavy hitters in order to get them to be able to growl properly every night and not lose their voice. Because there is a technique to do that where you have to sing from the stomach in order to not rip your throat apart if you're doing that style of singing.
Right.
And I started going to her because I started losing my voice a lot when we were on tour, because it's very, as a smaller band, look, it's great for Bruce Dickinson. He's got a crew of 3,000 people and he flies his own 747 to each show, right? That's easy to sing against that backdrop. But if you're early man and you're in a club playing to 35 people, I have to compete vocally with 5 full stacks, you know?
Yeah.
And it becomes difficult. You have to learn, you have to train yourself how to sing properly and not blow your voice out. And I started going to her, and she mentioned to me, you know, she was like, it's kind of funny because actually she did some tests with a piano and made me sing some few things. She was like, you're actually a baritone, but you sing when you go to this certain place in your throat, this thing just comes out and it has that Rob Halford Ozzy sound to it. And there's not a whole lot you can do about it. And it's the first time that I became like extremely aware of it. And to be honest with you, even a little bit on this new record, or a little bit on a lot of the stuff that you'll hear, I've got a lot more stuff lined up coming up very soon. I make sort of conscientious efforts now to sing in you know, different keys and whatever, and try to pay a little more attention to that. But brutal honesty, like early on, I just wasn't paying attention. Subliminally, was it there? It had to have been. You can hear the influence in everything that's happening, particularly on Closing In. But
you know, not to say that the early stuff sounded cheap. It just, the early stuff just, I get to back up what you're saying. The early stuff just almost sounds like you just hit the record button and just went.
Right. Exactly. And you know why? Because that's basically what we did. I mean, the beauty of that era is it was like, I don't know why, but we became, for some reason, unwisely for whoever that was, because I'm sure he's down about $500,000 for making this decision. But for some reason, everybody in the music industry in 2004 decided we were going to be the next thing coming out of New York City. So everything we did was hurry up, get them recorded. And there was a lot of pressure on us to make demos and to make records. And it was a stressful time for me because the proper amount of thought, which then translates into whether or not I'm getting my actual idea across to people musically, was being stepped on. Because everything was just like, oh, it needs to be raw. Just go, man. It's like total like Nirvana meets, everything's got to be packaged and labeled.
Yeah.
It's almost like Nirvana meets a retro Metallica and I'm like, what are you talking about? Like 3 months ago, I was alone with a 4-track in a shitty apartment in Brooklyn, like writing riffs. Now all of a sudden, like we're putting all these stamps on it, like, and I'd have people emailing me like, Mike, I can really hear the new wave of British heavy metal influence in what you're doing. And I literally had to call someone and be like, what's new wave of British heavy metal? What is this guy talking about? It was awesome. It opened up a whole new, I was like, oh, all these bands I've never heard of? Wow, amazing. And we sound just like them. This is incredible. But there was never a conscientious effort made to sound like that. It kind of goes back to what you were saying, like, you wrote a guitar line that existed. A similar situation.
Now, you just touched on it there. There's in those early man days, I'm talking 05, 06, when I saw you on tour, the press for you guys at that time, I saw you on a whole bunch of websites and all that. And please, I don't mean any disrespect by this. I kind of saw the talk of you guys go dark. Not saying that's a bad thing. Is that because you kind of went off doing a different thing for a while? You got a job or?
Yeah, I mean, basically what happened was I was never prepared. Everything that happened with the band in New York, I was completely unprepared for, and I was just a novice to what was about to happen when we signed our names to a contract.
Okay.
When I moved to, I had been in bands all my life, and going back to the heavy metal grandma story, nothing makes me happier than recording a good jam with killer riffs in it. I've been doing that for forever. And that's kind of like, that was my version of, a 75-year-old man's garden in his backyard. That's what I did. That's how I relaxed. I cranked up the 4-track and did my thing. And I wasn't really prepared for, given the situation with my, I'm sorry?
No, I'm just going to say, I didn't want to take the words out of your mouth. Kind of the limelight you were starting to get?
Exactly. And I wasn't prepared for, I had a lot of family problems at the time that were due to the religion, this made them 50,000 times worse. The fact that all of a sudden we were literally on MTV, still in a time when it actually kind of mattered. And I wasn't prepared for that at all. And not only was I not prepared for that, if you think I wasn't prepared for it, let's talk about the other guys that were in the band at the time. Like what starts to happen is there's these things called girls, and they start coming out of the woodwork as soon as your face is on a magazine and on MTV. And other guys in the band, and I'm not shit talking by any means. I'm still good friends with every past guy who's been in the band. They're all great dudes, but it was too much too soon. It was like we went from being, hey, we got a pretty good demo here. Let's play a couple basement shows, and maybe we'll play over here at this club and over here. We played at this club called The Hole once, and there was literally like, I'm going to say about 1,500 to 2,000 people. They had to close the street down trying to get in to see us into a club that holds maybe 500 people.
Wow.
That's too much buzz. Like, if you want to say, like, whereas the regular musician will be like, I really want to make it. I really want to see what that feels like to make it. After that night, I made it.
Yeah.
You know, I did it all. I was the king of New York City, and I hadn't only been on the scene for 3 months. It was like, what is going on? So, to be quite honest with you, the band peaked in the biggest city in the world so hard, so quickly, that it was almost like, and maybe at my own fault a little bit, but particularly for some other people in the band, when you actually have to go out and do the work, in other words, go on a 120-day tour, and you're the opening band of 4 bands, and you feel like you kind of already did it, as far as you're concerned, maybe not as far as the world is concerned, that's a grueling thing to go through.
Astonishing me, and that was actually one of the questions, probably the biggest question I wanted to ask you today is because, you know, going back to my original question, with the talk of you guys was, the buzz was huge, and you fast forward right now to, you know, November of 2014, and you see the sound that you guys had when you started, the sound that you guys have evolved into now is kind of what in the metal scene now is getting revived and is actually getting big now.
Right.
And you guys were at the forefront of that 10 years before these bands are doing it now.
Yeah, I mean, it makes it makes it it's an interesting position for me personally to be in. Let's just put it that way.
But, you know, talking to you, it doesn't sound like you have any resentment or any. You're not bummed out about it. You know, no, woe is me.
No way. Are you kidding me? I'm from Marion, Ohio. I got out of hell. You know.
Yeah.
Like any success that I can have on any level. The fact that, like, you know, last night we just did a Halloween EP, and I was working with my girlfriend, actually, who's been working her ass off with me to get these orders shipped out. How many guys can say this? I paid my rent in LA this month by releasing a Halloween EP. How rare is that?
That's nice.
You know, that's amazing. But hundreds of orders to ship out. And I was sitting there last night looking through, like, we got orders going to Sweden, Japan, Germany, Peoria, Illinois, Mexico City, Australia. That, to me, I judge my own success. I'm just competing with myself, if you will. You know, like, I'm not really paying that much attention to what's going on out there. And for me, I'm having raging success. If I'm not playing tambourine in Mastodon yet, oh well, so be it. You know? But I'm very happy with where I'm at right now. But you're right. It's humorous, and it's funny for me because people will discover us, and kids, you know, 14, 15, 16-year-old kids who it's not their fault, but they'll send me emails like, you guys sound exactly like these 8 bands, you know, and I want to be like, oh, you mean the 8 bands that we inspired to pick up a guitar? Yeah, we do sound like them, you know?
All right, well, let's talk about the new album a little bit. Thank God you've got the answers for us all. I sense a little sarcasm there, and particularly after hearing your backstory.
Yeah, I mean, let's just go ahead and call it. That's a straight shot at Jehovah's Witnesses right there. But yeah, it's this is a really important record to me because over the past year and a half, maybe 2 years, I reached an age where I had a decision to make. I was either going to quit doing this and join the ranks of the rest of the world, God forbid, or something had to change so that I made this sort of, even from just a financial aspect, so that I made it possible for myself to continue releasing records and keep the pedal to the floor, you know? And so I realized I really needed to learn recording, engineering, all that stuff much better than I had known it. Believe me, I'm a badass on a Tascam 4-track, but it doesn't mean much in 2014, you know? So this record it's an important one for me because I really had to push through. I convinced myself numerous times throughout the making of the record that I wasn't going to finish it, or that I didn't want to finish it, or it wasn't what I was trying to say, or, you know, I hadn't recorded something well enough or whatever. And I finally got to the point where I was like, you know what? This is fucking heavy metal. Again, let's go back to those tape trading days. Some of that shit was done on one mic hanging from a ceiling. You know, it's not about that. It's about, does the song have a soul or not? And every song on this record is, you know, has a major importance to me from that aspect. Already, since I recorded this, I've become 10 times the engineer, producer, or whatever since this was laid down. But that to me makes it special. Like it says on the Bandcamp page, recorded in various, you know, garages, closets, attics, you name it, over the course of a year and a half. So that it is what it is, but I'm very proud of it.
And it's a great album.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
So Thank God is not as thrashy as Death Potion was.
Right.
Not that Death Potion was super thrashy, but, you know, it had a bit more of a thrashy sound.
Right.
And Thank God sounds a little more laid back, groovy Sabbath kind of thing. What sort of evolution have you gone through since Death Potion?
I think what happened was I think that I felt like I love Death Potion. It's such a killer record. I love the riffs are like out of control. But I was pushing myself at the time we recorded Death Potion. We recorded that record with Jack Endino, who's a total genius. So absolutely love. Just becoming friends with him, recording that record was worth the whole experience. Period. But I was pushing myself to sort of outdo myself with thrash riffs. What happened 6 months after the record was made is the label sat on it and didn't come out for 2 years until after it was recorded. And I didn't listen to it for quite some time because of that, and actually became a little bit of a thorn in my side, obviously, when a label will sit on a record that long.
There's nothing you can do to kind of force them?
No.
We tried. There is a little bit, and we tried, but, you know, with a label, the bottom line is money. It's a business, and I'm not knocking them for that. That's what they're there for. Music is music, and the music industry is the music industry. And for them, they wanted to line us up on a big tour before we released that record. And basically what happened is I had lost interest and lost the financial ability to say yes and no to certain tours by the time they were ready to release the record. So it never really lined up properly. And it's the sort of evolution from going from that record to Thank God, I think is more of, you hear, you know, ironically enough, it's almost like there's more pain and anger in Thank God than there is in Death Potion. You know, and I think it's because it's a little bit of an exorcism of like, I want to try this and it's okay. I want to try this sort of, I'm just going to keep, you look at a song like The Longer the Life.
Yeah.
That song came out of me revisiting Bleach by Nirvana and just having my mind blown, thinking like, he's not doing anything. He's not playing anything. He keeps playing the same note over and over and over again. And they're like the greatest raw, like shitty punk rock songs of all time.
Yeah.
They're like unbelievable. But, you know, 5 years ago, I couldn't really bring that to the table because the label is going to say, no. We got to keep you. Everybody views you as mini Metallica. So if you don't follow that path, then we're going to lose record sales. And at that time, I was totally down to play ball with that. Now I am the complete opposite. You know, now I would rather on purpose show people like, hey, I've got diversity you don't even know about.
Well,
you know, but it's funny. You might see me do a record that sounds even thrashier than Death Potion 6 months from now. You know, it's just something I had to get out on this one.
Are you at a point now that you can, because you just mentioned it, are you at a point now where you could say, hey, no, we're not going to do that shitty tour with this? Not saying, you know, we're talking trash about any bands, but I'm not going to do that tour. I'm not going to slug around the country and, you know, do this.
I think you just described the AM of every one of my days that I live right now. Okay. You know, it's all about making wise decisions. You know, I just read, I'm not going to say who said it because it's not a metal guy, but this is the most genius thing I've read in quite some time. I just read a quote of somebody that said, the most perfect way to ruin a friendship is to be in a band with somebody. And the most, even more perfect way to ruin a band is to go on tour. Those are the two truest statements I can possibly think of to explain, at least from my perspective, why this model that for some reason we still follow of putting a band out in a van, making them sleep in Walmart parking lots every night for no money on tour, you know, and I'm speaking particularly of metal bands, putting them out on the road for 8 to 10 months a year so that they all want to kill each other. Nobody has a dime under the guise that they're going to quote unquote make it and eventually be on the cover of Rolling Stone is an old system that we shouldn't be following anymore. So for me, I want to choose wisely across the board, the songwriting, the tours, all of it. If that makes any sense.
It totally makes sense. You know, you see that news that came out, what was it, a couple weeks ago about no artist has reached platinum level of success. You know, selling albums this year, and I think that just factors into the whole level that the whole music industry as a whole has just changed. And since it's changed so much, and you now have seen it, that you know what you can do and can't do, and you're not going to get fucked over anymore.
Exactly. And the important thing here's the most crucial part for me. The important thing is to keep a positive attitude, which as metalheads is not our strong suit, you know. But the important thing is to not buy into. Listen, music is music. I sit down, I make it. It's got to be the best possible riff for that moment in time. It's got to be a song about something. I choose the subject matter, I get it down, and I'm done. That process has absolutely nothing to do with the music industry. So there's no reason for me to tie the two together and let the latter, the music industry, disrupt what I'm doing with my music. That's all that happened with Early Man for a decade. We just let these guys push us this way. This manager tell us to play with these guys. Your hair should be 4 times longer. It should be shorter. Wear bell bottoms. The jeans aren't tight enough. Which metal shirt is it going to be? It's important. They'll see it. Fuck really, all of that.
It is really that fucking deep?
Yeah, it's that deep. It's that deep. And these are coming from people that you think that's not happening with, you know? Believe me, there's a guy with a tape measure measuring Kerry King's chains. Trust me.
Yeah.
Yep, they're exactly where they should be. It's that deep, and it's ridiculous. So for me, I just try to say, I'm really trying to do something here that I honestly think has never been done. What I'm going to try to do is to be more prolific than anyone you've ever seen. Because I've taught myself how to record. I've taught myself how to mix, master, produce, do the whole thing, whether that's in a studio or whether I have to do it by bringing my gear to someone's house, whatever it's going to take. Since I've taught myself how to do that, I can now just go. And there's no reason I can't release at least 2, 3, 4 records, full lengths, a year at this point. There's absolutely no reason for that. This record is the sort of breaking open of the dam of that possibility happening. But that, to me, is exciting. You know, you have all these guys right now that are all over Blabbermouth and Facebook and Twitter. The record industry, Kiss says even the record is dead. Rock and roll's dead. Get the fuck out of here. Sit down and write a song. It's only dead if you kill it, right?
Yeah.
So if you're making music, if you're putting it out there, if there's avenues for me to, literally 3 weeks ago, at my own birthday party, I just had an idea like, I wonder if we could get a Halloween EP, a 3-song EP out to the world on Halloween Day. It happened. Do you think that would happen in 2005?
No.
You know, we'd still be having meetings about, what color should the logo be though in Japan? What do you think, you know? It's just ridiculous. It's too much for somebody who's truly focused on their music. It's too much for them to deal with. So, I think that's the real reason why you saw at least me over the past 4 or 5 years just kind of lay low. Because I said, you know what, I want to take this seriously, but I need a new business plan for me, something that works for me, outside of that realm.
In this lifetime, no one's going to look out for any of us. And that, just talking to you this last, 40 minutes or so we've been talking to you, your intelligence really comes through, and it sounds like you're not going to be fucked over anymore. You're taking the ball in your own hands, ball in your court, you're running with it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you're right. But what's funny is we, particularly as musicians, just to get this point across to anybody that's listening to your show as a musician, stop listening to these fucking people. Stop listening to rich people. Stop listening to them. Stop buying into it. They're all completely full of shit. Anybody that comes along and offers you anything that doesn't have something that, massively boosts your career, where you can see it, like, oh yeah, that makes sense. This guy wants to do this and whatever. You should avoid it like the plague, That we have examples in our history of guys, you can go back to guys like Johnny Cash selling records out of his trunk. There's a reason for it. There's a reason that system works. Forget about, being on the cover of fucking Terrorizer or whatever. Don't worry about that shit. Just put a business plan together that says, like, can I pay my rent and can I avoid the wide road that the rest of society is on, and continue to do this by keeping my very small, tight fan base happy and connected with them. What I'm doing is working like a charm right now. So I wouldn't change anything, but I would definitely, I agree with you. You get to a point where here's the problem. Most guys at my age and at my point that I'm at right now, what do? They just quit. Yep. They quit.
Yeah.
They're done. You don't hear anything from them anymore. There's hundreds, maybe even thousands of amazing records gone because of that. We'll never hear them. And so for me, I just kind of came to a fork in the road where I was like, nah, not mine. You motherfuckers are going to have to hear my riffs till I'm 90. That's just how it's going to work.
Excellent.
So it's definitely a new a new approach for me over the past 6 months to year. But I'm excited and I'm thrilled that guys like yourselves have picked up on it and like the record.
Question for you. One last thing. In this year alone, again, we've lost, some musical greats. We lost Dave from Guar.
Right.
Just this past week, Wayne from Static X died.
Right.
Have you or have any words of advice for these guys out there living this crazy drug-fueled, alcohol,
don't do drugs?
I do have advice. Nobody, going back to what we were discussing earlier with me being from New York and really being at the top of the King of New York for a while Early Man was blowing up. Nobody did more coke. Nobody drank more. Nobody was crazier than me for a long time. Push it to almost nearly a decade. But I went completely sober about 2 years ago, coming off of a really gnarly experience I had with all of the aforementioned problems. And it's really the only way to go. I mean, it brings your focus. I'm just talking about, I'm not one of these guys who's like going to tell people not to drink or none of that. People should do what they want to do and make their lives enjoyable. But it's just unfortunate as rock stars, like the guys you just mentioned, we buy into a story that's bullshit, that we are all supposed to be out there living like Keith Richards or Lemmy every day, and it doesn't work for all of us. We're not all built the same. So once you're not 22 anymore, one line of that shit or a couple extra beers can put you in the grave. And it's unfortunate. So I would say, to anybody out there, be careful. Don't overdo it. And also don't think you have to do any of it. Go to work. Write a business plan. If your choices are buy an 8-ball of Coke or write a business plan for your band, write the business plan. That's my advice.
Indeed. So we're planning to play a couple songs here on the podcast.
Cool.
And first up, we're going to play Black Rains Are Falling. Would you like to intro that, say anything about it before?
That song is about the first group of firefighters that responded at Chernobyl when it blew up in, I think, 86, for those that may or may not be familiar with that situation. But the coolest thing about this song is through the crowdfunding campaign that we ran, all of the solos of the song are fans. It's 3 different guys. There's 2 solos that happen in the middle, and then there's one that happens at the end. That's not me. Those are longtime early Man fans from, in some cases, over a decade ago that got to play on the record on what I think is one of the best, if not the best song on the record.
Excellent. All right, we're going to play that for you now. Black Rains Are Falling. All right, that was Black Rains Are Falling by Early Man from the new album, Thank God You've Got the Answers for Us All. Stick around to the end of the show and we'll have another song for you from Early Man. All right, so last week we did the top 3 of Monomarth. This week we're doing one that we've been trying to work in for the last few episodes, but we sort of forgot, and I noticed it in my notes and said, hey, let's do this time. And this is going to be our top hair metal / glam bands list.
Yep.
How many did you do?
I got 10. Now, let me start by saying, in a big asterisk here, I was born again in 83, okay?
You were born again?
No. I was born in 83, okay? My growing up with 80s music, I didn't listen to it, of course, okay? This is all what I've got from MTV, from the radio, from TV,
from your mom.
Yeah, from my parents driving in the car. Okay, some of these obviously are where I've listened to obviously later in life. So please, go easy on my list here. I will say with, though, a big fucking sense of pride, there's no Cinderella on this list. There's no Whitesnake. Okay?
All right. Well, when you talk glam and hair metal and things like that, there's bands that get lumped in there that weren't necessarily glam or hair metal. But just because of the time period, they sort of get lumped in there. So at least on my list, and I've got 15 on my list because I did actually live through this time. But, I may list a band and you're going to be like, that's not hair metal. Yeah, but it came out at the same time from the same scene.
I have some the same for my list.
So basically what we're saying here, take it with a grain of salt.
We're just having fun.
Just having fun. All right. You want to go first?
Yes. Go easy on me.
Oh, well, hey, dude, my list is stuff that every one of these is going to...
Number 10 is the band White Lion.
All right.
And their album Pride.
Wait. I never had a chance to love you.
Number 9, Hanoi Rocks and 2 Steps from the Move.
Nice.
Yep. Number 3, Slaughterer, Stick It To Ya.
Oh, man. I hated them. It's funny, though, because Mark Slaughter played with the Vinnie Vincent Invasion, and I liked him with Vinnie Vincent Invasion, but I didn't like Slaughter.
Oh, number 6. This one I probably could have put up higher. Scorpions, their album, and I chose Blackout.
Yeah, okay. That's a great album.
Yeah. 5, maybe I lost track of where we're at, but Def Leppard, Hysteria.
Okay.
It's not hair glam and stuff, but it's kind of that.
Oh, I'm a big Def Leppard fan.
I took my mom to see this next band, Bon Jovi.
I knew that was going to be on there.
Slippery When Wet.
Indeed.
I'm a fan.
Yeah.
I'm a fan. Rat, I went with, and I like this album a lot, Invasion of Your Privacy.
Second album.
Yep.
Or third album?
Yeah, third, I think. Second, third, yep. And then Motley Crue, Dr. Feelgood.
Really? I have no problem with Crue. I mean, Crue's on my list. But Dr. Feelgood? Well, okay. I know, that was their most popular album probably, but...
Then this one's not hair or glam, but I like them a lot. Wasp, and I put their self-titled release on here.
That's a good point. I don't have them on my list. I considered them a little more, but no, it makes sense because they are in that scene. Yeah. So that's a good call there.
Number 1, probably my favorite singer out of this band genre stuff. Any guess what you want to go with?
Gosh, it's not Mr. Big.
No, I was just going through bands earlier. And
yeah, you mentioned that to me.
Yeah,
I was like, it couldn't be that. I don't know.
This is Skid Row.
Okay, that was actually going to be my guess.
Wow. Yeah. I love Sebastian Bach.
Oh yeah,
a killer. A great frontman. Great voice. And I went with their self-titled Skid Row.
Right on. All right, that's a good list, particularly for someone who didn't live through it. All right. Well, I've got 15 because I couldn't narrow it down.
And George, hold on. George is getting his hair out of his way now. And he's touching up his makeup.
As if I have any hair. All right, number 15, Faster Pussycat and their self-titled first album.
I've never known what to listen with them.
First album.
Okay.
Yeah, that's good. At the time, I was like, wow, this is cool. A couple years later, I was like, wow, this is lame. But at the time, I was digging it. Speaking of things that I didn't like for very long, the next one at number 14, Poison, Look What the Cat Dragged In.
Okay.
When that came out, I fell in love. I was like, look at those hot chicks on that album cover. I did not understand the concept of glam at the time. Same thing happened with one of these other albums. I literally was looking at it going, man or woman, man or woman, man or, I don't know whether to think this is hot or not. Because I didn't know. I
don't want to look, but I do.
Hey, they really looked like girls on that album. It's crazy. All right. Number 13, Dokken, Tooth and Nail. That was my first Dokken album. And they were kind of glamish, but not really. They weren't overly hair. I think they probably put on the hairspray and spandex like everybody else, but not over the top like Poison. And George Lynch, incredible guitar player. Don Dokken, great singer. Great album. I loved that album when it came out. Number 12, Tesla and Mechanical Resonance, their first album. Again, Tesla, not in any way a hair metal band. They were more of a jeans and denim jacket kind of band, But during that time period, that was kind of the music they played, and they got lumped in with these people. My very first concert, I was telling this to Chris the other day over at Rock and Roll Graveyard. He had a copy of Mechanical Resonance on vinyl that I snagged. And I was like, dude, this was my first show ever. It was David Lee Roth with Tesla opening up. So Tesla's got a special place in my heart. Number 11, Quiet Riot and Metal Health. The song Metal Health, of course. And Come On, Feel the Noise. Classics.
Yeah.
Classic from that era. Love that stuff.
I'm an idiot. Don't know why.
No, you had good choices. I just have better ones. All right, number 10, Motley Crue, Shout at the Devil. How did this not win? I must not have rearranged this list very well, because this should have been further up than 10. Shout at the Devil was like, this was the other one where when I saw it, I was like, man or woman, man or woman. I was like, I was like, Vince Neil might be hot. I didn't know the names. I just saw it and I was like, wow, blonde, makeup, not wearing much. Don't know. Eventually I figured out it was a dude. But Shout at the Devil was definitely their best album. Very, very raw and heavy. They hadn't gone too far into the glam yet. Not like they would with the next album, Theater of Pain. Definitely my favorite Crue album. Number 9, one of the bands you slagged on, Cinderella and Long Cold Winter. I picked up their first album on vinyl when it came out, but their second album was much more bluesy, and Don't Know What You Got Till It's Gone, and some of these songs, good stuff. I love that album. Number 8, I feel like I've been saying this list forever now. Number 8, Dangerous Toys and their self-titled first album. I love me some Dangerous Toys. Even now, I will bust out Dangerous Toys and listen to them. First thing I heard from them was before this album even came out, they were on a soundtrack for a movie. The movie was called Shocker, and the song was called Demon Bell. And, like Megadeth was on there, and Alice Cooper, or no, not Alice Cooper, the Megadeth did an Alice Cooper song. But anyway, the song was on that soundtrack album. I fucking loved it. So when their album came out, I picked it up. I still love it. The singer for Dangerous Toys, a dude named Jason McMaster.
Okay.
Still going strong. He's got a new band called Evil United. It's pretty fucking thrash. It's definitely not hair metal. So he's a true metal warrior, man. He's been doing it for decades. Number 7, Skid Row.
Wow.
Slave to the Grind, however.
See, I was gonna. That's my favorite album by them. It is.
The first Slave to the Grind?
Slave to the Grind is, but I thought we were sticking to 80s. And that came out in 91, didn't it?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah.
No, I just meant, I probably called it that, but I just meant from that.
Oh, okay.
From that era.
Yeah, that's definitely my favorite album too.
Yeah. That Slave to the Grind was
Quicksand Jesus.
Yeah, it was a pretty heavy album, but also really good melodic stuff like that. Quicksand Jesus and Wasted Time and In a Darkened Room, stuff like that. Really great album. Sebastian Bach, one singing his ass off, motherfucker.
Yes.
Incredible. Number 6, another one that I'm surprised is so far down on the list. Rat and Out of the Cellar. When I discovered this album, it was one of those like life changers. I'd been listening to like some of the older like 70s and early 80s hard rock and metal bands, but Out of the Cellar was like fresh and new. It was like, I don't know, it was different. And when that came out, it blew my mind. And I still have a special place in my heart for Rat today. Every year, the first day it snows, I always have to bust out the Rat album, Dancing Undercover.
Okay.
Don't know why, but somewhere in high school, I was probably listening to it on the school bus on the way home from school, and it was snowing. And now every time I think of that first snow, I think of that album.
That's awesome.
So, number 5, Scorpions, Love at First Sting. Classics like Rock You Like a Hurricane, Still Loving You, stuff like that. Great Amazing album. Saw these guys last year on tour. Last year, year before. Took Barb to go see them. Still sound amazing. Number 4, Def Leppard and Pyromania.
Okay.
When Pyromania came out, 83, it was like the Thriller of hard rock. It fucking blew up like nobody. You know, that album was everywhere. And me personally, it's still my favorite. It's got much more of that new wave of British heavy metal, hard rock sound to it before Hysteria, where they went a little more pop. Number 3 is the Fastway with the Trick or Treat soundtrack. That's still also one of my favorite albums of all time. It's a really cheesy movie called Trick or Treat with the dude Skippy from Family Ties or whatever. It was a really bad horror movie, but at the same time, it was really cool because it was heavy metal themed.
Yeah.
There's heavy metal music in it. It was about a metalhead who everybody shit on, and he was getting his revenge. And, you know, I saw that in the theater. I heard this, and I was like, wow, Fastway fucking rules, man. And I still love those songs. Number 2, Twisted Sister and Stay Hungry. I can never say enough good stuff about Dee Snider and Twisted Sister. These guys fucking rule. They still fucking rule. Dee is an incredible front man, an icon of heavy metal, and I love him. Number 1, wasn't sure if these guys really fit in this category, but...
Winger?
Yes. Yes. Let me go get my Winger shirt. Number 1, Guns N' Roses' Appetite for Destruction. Again...
Yes, I don't know if they really were the list, but yes, the time.
Yeah, it came out in like 87, I think. It was smack dab in the middle of all the hair metal and things like that. And while they were certainly slightly more punk, slightly more Aerosmith, old school Aerosmith, you know, they certainly had some big hair, and Appetite for Destruction, probably one of the greatest albums of all time.
Yeah.
Any genre, you know. It's amazing. All right.
That was fun.
That was long, man. I feel like I need to go drink a couple glasses of water after all that. All right, so last time on Convincing Buke, I made a case for Exodus. Buke had to listen to 4 songs, Bonded by Blood, and Then There Were None from the Paul Bailoff era, and then Verbal Razors and Collateral Damage from the Steve Souza era. Take it away.
I will say this first off. I like them better than Overkill. Okay.
Well, that's good because you liked Overkill.
No, I liked Overkill, but this harsher.
Yes,
Harsher is the first thing that comes to mind.
Mm-hmm. And I want to know what you think of both eras too.
Wish I was better with my words and I could find a better description. I could see why some fans could have left.
At what point?
When the lineups changed.
You mean when Dukes came on board?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
The first 2 tracks that you had me listen to were gruffer.
Yeah, Paul Bailoff.
Yeah.
Couldn't sing very well, but he had such passion and you know.
Again, I'm sitting here, you guys aren't hearing the pause that George cut out. I'm sitting here wishing I had the thesaurus right into my hand so I could describe this, but there was a rough sound.
His raw emotion, like almost like hysterical panic. Yeah, you bonded by blood.
Yes. I didn't hear that as much in the other half.
Really? You didn't think Sousa? Well, no.
Didn't pull it off.
Different style, but I think Sousa's pretty damn amazing too. I mean, Verbal Razors. Did you listen to that?
Yes.
That song is so. I listened to it again after I posted it. I was like, this song is so fast. And he to do all those words without tripping it up and keeping on the timing and the everything, I was like, wow, that is amazing.
Now, I will say this after now listening to 2 of these Convincing Buke segments, which this is quickly becoming one of my favorite segments. I think the lyrics of Overkill that you had me listen to, I like those lyrics better than Exodus so far.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Bottom line, though.
Did this convince me?
Do you like Exodus?
Yes.
Excellent. That's what I want to hear. 2-1, baby.
Yes, you're on a roll.
On a roll.
You're on a roll. You are doing good.
All right. Well, I'll have to see what I can come up with for next time.
I'm loving it.
Obituary, maybe.
That's going to be rough. That's going to be harder than Overkill and Exodus, but
all right. Cool. Well,
I'm loving that. Sorry, you guys. I'm lucky you guys didn't have to hear me in silence. I'll sit here in the awkward silence as I try and think of fucking words because I'm an idiot.
All right. Well, what are you listening to this week?
This week I'm listening to, actually, how I found these guys was actually by Reddit. Brutal death metal band from Athens, Greece. Dead Congregation.
Oh, yeah.
And their 2014 release of Promulgation of the Fall.
Yeah.
Just brutal death metal.
Yeah, I've heard that album.
It just came up on Reddit. I decided just to start listening to it, and it's heavy death metal, and it kind of has some doomy undertones with it that sometimes, but just brutal stuff.
Right on.
So that's what I'm listening to this week, in addition to Revocation's latest release, Deathless.
That's a good one.
Still has been hooking me.
Yeah, that's a great one.
The guitar work on that album alone blows me away every time I listen to it. That's making my top 10 list, by the way.
Sweet. All right. Well, so this week I've been listening to the forthcoming new Primordial album, Where Greater Men Have Fallen. This is a great album as well. Probably going to make my list somewhere. Alan, the singer from Primordial, is a very busy man. He's got at least 2 other bands that I know of. One of them, Twilight of the Gods, which is more of a sort of battery / power metal kind of thing. And then Dread Sovereign, which is more doom. Listening to the new Primordial album, I haven't gotten all the way through yet, but it sounds a little more like Dread Sovereign to me. It's slower. The vocals were all clean and kind of doom. I haven't listened to the whole thing yet, so maybe there's some harsh vocals on there, but the songs I've heard so far, didn't hear any. Production was really good, a lot better than the last album, and the vocals were very pronounced and easy to hear, so I was really happy with that. I think you're going to find this is going to be a really great album. What's your classic for this week?
My classic for the week, went back and I've been listening to, I've been on a power metal kick this week, and I wanted to try and find an early classic power metal speed band to kind of, mention this week.
Curious.
Yep, and I found the band Liege Lord.
Wow.
And this album I've been listening to a lot. Their 1988 release, Master Control.
Wow.
This album is amazing. Amazing.
I remember
I
this.
am hearing I'm telling you, the early sound of power metal is just breaking through the fucking wall here, like the Kool-Aid guy.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Is right. Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
This album, for how I just found these guys this past week, is beyond me, because I should have been listening to these guys for a while.
I remember seeing these guys in the cassette bins in the 80s. Okay? So, yeah.
Yeah, so Liege Lord, Master Control. If you're a power metal fan, you want to hear the early sounds of power metal, speed metal, but not thrashy sound, check these guys out. Really fucking cool.
Right on.
George will have it on vinyl now.
I don't think I have that on vinyl. My classic this week goes in a rather different direction. This is the 1987 debut album from Death, Scream Bloody Gore. This was my first album of this kind. I bought this on cassette when it came out in 87. I didn't know what the fuck to think of this band. I saw the album art and I was like, oh, it's definitely metal. Got to pick this up. And I had not yet experienced really death metal. I may have heard Possessed, and obviously I'd heard things like Venom. I probably heard Bathory, but this was really like death metal, okay? And this is the first time I ever used the phrase Cookie Monster vocals.
Which we think has been stolen from you.
Yes, just like Electric Funeral. I coined that term and somebody else got the credit. But yeah, I was like, when Scream Bloody Gore came out, I did not like it at all. Oh, that's not true. The music I liked. I was like, what the hell is the guy doing with these vocals? I was like, this is crazy. This is insane. I have no idea what he's saying. Crazy song titles like Zombie Ritual and Regurgitated Guts. It was very graphic. Despite metal being a dark music, there wasn't really a lot of super graphic stuff by that time. And so it was like, wow. It didn't turn me off to it. I was just like, that's weird.
Yeah.
But it would be a few more years before I got into death metal. So now I'm listening back to it this week. I was like, it really stands up still. It's a really great album. So it's really a shame that Of course, Chuck is no longer with us. All right, well, I think we're just about ready to wrap things up. We do have a little bit more with Mike Conte from Early Man. He's going to talk a little bit more about this last song before we play it. But before we get into that, make sure you check us out on Facebook, Twitter, on iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, all of these various mini... Instagram, all these places you can find us.
Keep the emails coming. Keep the tweets coming. Thanks to all the retweets we got this past week for our Slagle interview. Thanks to all the comments and everything. You guys have been great. Again, like Mike, you hear on the interview, his album's on Bandcamp.
Yep.
You can go on there and check it out.
I think it's on iTunes as well.
Yep.
So yes, definitely support Early Man. Great band, great guy, great music.
Yep.
All right, let's get into this last bit. All right, we're here again with Mike Conte from Early Man, and we're going to play you another song from the new album, Thank God You've Got the Answers for Us All. This song is called The Longer the Life. What can you tell us about this one, Mike?
It's probably, I think this might be my favorite song on the record. It's the first song that I recorded for the record, but I think musically what I was going for was a lot of constraint. I wanted simplicity. And lyrically, it's just sort of born out of, I'm ultimately a Midwestern guy living in LA. In LA where everybody's trying to live forever and, juice and work out and do all things that I can't stand. So the main line in the song is, the longer the life, the more that they will bleed, which is basically just saying, what are you even trying to do with yourselves? Why do you want the extra 20 years if it's going to be being an orange bodybuilder that lives in LA like a douchebag? So that's the gist of it.
All right, well, we're here at the end of the episode, so we're going to play that last song, and that'll be it for this week. Thanks a lot, Mike, for being on the show.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
All right, so this is The Longer the Life. We'll see you next time.